All right, thank you. Good morning. I'm Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. I want to thank you for joining me today for an important announcement of a report that we are releasing, and appropriately we are releasing it during National School Bus Safety Week. I am really pleased to be joined by an outstanding group of leaders here today. Congressman Eliot Engel, a longtime friend who is district we stand in, Senate Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the Mayor of New Rochelle, Noam Bramson, Yonkers Police Commissioner Charles Gardner, and I'm especially pleased to be joined by parents' representatives also, Julia Oakes and Michelle Balachandran, co-presidents of the New Rochelle PTA Council, who will be making a statement, and Sally Pinto of the Yonkers Council of PBAs. We also have representatives here from the Teachers Union and representatives from Safe Kids Westchester. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're here because of a very serious problem, which fortunately has a very simple solution. Every morning, more than 2 million New Yorkers put their kids on the school bus, trusting that they will be well cared for. But unfortunately, an investigation just completed by our office shows that bus companies across New York are putting our kids at risk and failing to report serious traffic violations to state regulators. After subpoenaing 15 school bus companies in Westchester and Suffolk Counties, and I have some of the folks who are from my Westchester and Suffolk offices who led this investigation with us here today, and with the cooperation of some local officials, we found that these companies had amassed nearly 1,500 tickets from red light cameras in just the past 3 years. These are tickets for school buses running red lights. Here in Westchester, we found school buses had received almost 300 red light camera tickets last year alone. It is an outrageous, unacceptable danger to students, pedestrians, and other drivers. In New York, thanks to stringent licensing requirements, training and inspection requirements, school buses are actually safer than ordinary vehicles. They have to comply with a long list of safety provisions under New York's Vehicle and Traffic Law, and union bus drivers, members of Transit Workers Local 100, Teamsters Local 1205, and others, go through a rigorous training process to make sure our kids get the best drivers possible. But we, through our investigation, have uncovered a major flaw in our system. As I just said, school bus safety relies on a set of rules under New York's Vehicle and Traffic Law. Bus companies are required to report accidents and convictions of drivers for violation of motor vehicle laws to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Unfortunately, the state has a loophole you could drive the very largest bus through. Those nearly 1,500 red light camera tickets I mentioned earlier, bus companies today are not required to report those tickets to the Department of Motor Vehicles. The statute governing school bus safety and reporting requirements has never been updated to take account of the widespread use of red light cameras. Most of the statutory scheme actually dates back to 1974. Bus companies don't even have to take these violations in account as a part of their evaluation of drivers. If you or I get caught running a red light by the police, we get points on our license. And if we get too many points, we can lose our licenses. And for school bus drivers, appropriately, there's a stricter set of rules. If a driver gets 9 or more points on their license, they can no longer drive a school bus. But tickets from red light cameras are treated differently than tickets you get directly from the police. They don't put points on your driver's license. It's often hard to prove who was driving, so with red light cameras, the owner of the vehicle gets the ticket and is assessed a fine. So if a school bus driver got 3 tickets for running red lights from the police within an 18-month period, they would get 9 points on their license and be disqualified from driving a school bus for a year. But if that same school bus driver got 3 red light camera tickets in the same time frame, he'd get no points on his license and can continue to drive a bus. A driver could theoretically rack up dozens of red light tickets and never lose their license. That is a big loophole that needs to be fixed. Red light camera tickets are sent directly to the bus company. The bus company knows who's operating a bus that ran a red light, so it's clearly up to the bus company to ensure that their drivers are driving safely. But now there is no law in place to require them to do that. Our investigation showed the lack of accountability is, in fact, a significant problem. We were shocked to find out that 174 school bus drivers in the 2 counties we studied, Westchester and Suffolk, had multiple red light camera tickets on the job within just the past 3 years. We saw photos, and we have 2 right here, of buses rolling through red lights. This is a red light camera at this very intersection, ladies and gentlemen. and you can see a school bus running through it. We have pictures of buses rolling through red lights to turn right, to go straight, and even buses running red lights to turn left. And again, our study was only of 2 counties, but it is fair to assume that the problem is widespread in any part of the state where red light cameras are in operation. We decided this is too important to wait for to subpoena all the other bus companies, so we wanted to make these results public. This situation clearly has to change, and the report that we've issued today, which you're welcome to, Wrong on Red, calls for new laws to protect our kids. These are simple fixes. It should not be a partisan issue. We expect this to get enacted very quickly once the legislature reconvenes in Albany. First, we propose that bus companies must be required to report red light camera tickets and the offending drivers to the DMV. They have to be treated like other traffic infractions. If the state doesn't have the information, we can't implement the necessary policies or procedures to protect our kids. Second, bus companies must be required to consider red light camera offenses in their evaluations of drivers. If you're putting kids in danger, that should be considered as a serious problem with your job performance. And finally, bus companies should provide a detailed annual report of red light offenses to the school districts they serve. Right now, school districts are operating in the dark and have no opportunity to fairly assess whether their students are being transported safely. More than 2.3 million New York children go to school on the bus every day. Running red lights is an inexcusable risk for those kids. In 2015, nearly 800 people were killed and 137,000 were injured in crashes that involved red light running. This is an issue all across the state and all across the country. And we know that on average, every 3 days in the United States, there's a fatal crash involving a school bus. The threat is not just to the people inside the bus either. More than half of those killed in these accidents were pedestrians, bicyclists, and people in other vehicles who were hit by red light runners. Big school buses running red lights pose an unacceptable risk to our children, to our communities. We have to solve this problem now, and our proposed revisions to the law will make all of us safer. So I thank you, and I thank all those who are out here with us today at one of the very intersections that we have examined and looked and developed evidence from this problem. First, we're going to hear from some parent representatives who've been kind enough to join us, Julia Oakes and Michelle Balachandran, the co-presidents of New Rochelle PTA Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good day, everybody. Thank you, Attorney General Schneiderman, for inviting us here today to discuss school bus safety. My name is Julia Oakes, and I'm president of the PTA Council for the City School District of New Rochelle. We are the umbrella organization for all the chartered PTAs in New Rochelle. I am here with my co-president, Michelle Balachandran, and some of New Rochelle's PTA leaders. Each day, our students travel to school on foot, by bike, by car, and some by bus. We trust that our bus drivers and the companies they work for are as concerned with safety as we are as parents. And Michelle's going to take over.
We on PTA welcome the opportunity to work alongside Attorney General Schneiderman to implement fair and workable safety measures, realizing that we are all stakeholders when it comes to our children. We look forward to figuring out how we as parents and caregivers can lend support to local bus drivers in the important work that they do, transporting our children. And we'll partner with our representatives in city and state governments, as well as our school board and administration, to continue to look for ways to improve the safety for our children as they travel to and from their place of learning.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to hear from Sally Pinto from the Yonkers Council of PTAs.
Thank you. My name is Sally Pinto, the president of the Yonkers Council of PTAs, and I would like to thank Attorney General Schneiderman for this report. The safety of our children is paramount. One injury is one too many. Even a minor accident. I was in a minor accident the other week. Even a little back injury for a 4-year-old, a 12-year-old can mean more than that in the future. This corner is not just any corner. We've had multiple accidents there. It's a very popular corner for accidents. So imagine having a bus run through. It could be tragic. We don't want any tragedies anywhere, Westchester, anywhere. So we thank you for your work. We support you. We support all our legislators. We support the Board of Ed in anything that can be done for the safety of our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to hear from a very long-time friend, colleague, and ally of mine whose district we stand in. And whenever Congress does get its act together, we hope that this is an issue that can be addressed at the federal level. Also, and when it gets its act together, one of those leading will be our Congressman, Eliot Engel. Congressman?
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you very much, and I want to thank the Attorney General for coming here to Yonkers today and welcome him and welcome everyone to the 16th Congressional District. You know, this is really a non-brainer. As the Attorney General said, 2.3 million children go on buses in New York every single day. And you just assume that all precautions are being taken. You just assume that a driver who's driving a bus with precious cargo on it, your children, our children, would not go through a red light. You would think that everyone would err on the side of caution when it comes to our children. And I was really shocked, tell the Attorney General, when I was told about this survey, I was really shocked about it because I thought that bus drivers, if anything, should be much more cautious than the average driver who drives every day. I mean, we all should be cautious, but if there's somebody who should be at the top of the pack or the front of the pack, it would be people driving children to school. And so this is just a common sense approach. It's one of these things where you look at it and you say, this is logical. What do you mean it hasn't been done? We would just assume that this would have been taken care of a long time ago. But we have a great Attorney General for New York, and not only getting involved with this, but so many other things to make our city and state and country better, that this is something that we should do all across the country, perhaps start at a local level and then continue it. So I want to thank the Attorney General. We've worked together for a long, long time. And it's these kinds of bread and butter issues that is so important and makes the job and the work of the Attorney General so important. And that's why we're lucky to have Eric Schneiderman and lucky to do this. I think we're going to all put our heads together and make sure that this is implemented, and implemented not only across New York State, but hopefully across the country as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Engel. And now another terrific colleague in government, New York Senate Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Attorney General Schneiderman, for doing the work that you always do. You always focus on not only the big things, but the things that really matter right here in the state of New York. And of course, you said earlier that this should be a no-brainer. You're absolutely right. It should be. And this is a state law, and I have to remind everyone, and I know everyone knows, that the reason why we instituted the red light cameras at the behest of many of our municipal officials, and you'll be hearing from one of them shortly, is we understood the safety issues. Running red lights, no matter who you are, is really, really detrimental to people's safety and health, and had to be addressed. So that's why the red light cameras exist. So when you think that the precious cargo that is being carried by these school buses somehow have an opportunity to evade the very reason why we instated the red light camera law, it's really ridiculous. So I know there's a representative from Assemblywoman Mayor's office here. You'll be hearing from another colleague whose district this is, Senator Latimer. But you have been in the state Senate, and some things can be extremely contentious. It is my hope that this will not be I certainly know that my conference will be pushing to make sure that this loophole is closed, that children who get on the bus, and people are obviously, all of us are concerned about their safety, will indeed be safe, because this can be resolved quickly. Thank you so much for your attention to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And now another great colleague in government whose Senate district we stand, and someone who has spoken to me about issues related to school bus safety and looked at legislation to make our children safer in the past, State Senator George Latimer.
It's just about all been said, but I think we have to repeat how much we appreciate the Attorney General and his team researching the issue, not just a press conference to get a headline, but a thorough understanding of what the problem is. The solution is very straightforward. It's legislation that Assembly members and senators can wrap support around, and hopefully in short order this will become law, and we'll thank you again for your foresight and your vision.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now one of the local officials who was in fact helpful in us gathering the information, and another outstanding colleague in government, New Rochelle Mayor Noam Branson. Your Honor.
I want to thank the Attorney General for bringing us together. It's a pleasure to be with colleagues and friends, particularly my friends from the New Rochelle PTA. And in the immortal words of Mo Udall when he was the 7th speaker at an event, everything has been said, but not everyone has said it. So I will be very, very brief. Nothing is more important than the safety of our children. When parents put their little ones on the bus in the morning, they deserve to know, they expect to know that they will be treated as the most important things in the world. And that's why it is so critical for government to be evaluating the safety records of school bus companies, and why it only makes sense to use all the available data in making those evaluations. So I applaud the Attorney General for this common sense suggestion, and I do hope that through our collective efforts this can be adopted quickly for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now someone who is a terrific colleague in law enforcement, Yonkers Police Department Commissioner Charles Gardner. Commissioner, thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of our mayor, Mike Spano, and the men and women of the Yonkers Police Department, we wholeheartedly support Attorney General Schneiderman in making our communities safer for our children. Here in Yonkers, approximately 13,000 children are transported on school buses each day, and this proposed change in state law will hold those bus drivers more accountable for their actions, thereby increasing the safety of the public, and more specifically our children. Furthermore, school bus drivers here in Yonkers are also licensed by the police department, and will utilize the driving safety record from this new law to help us assess the approval process and also the monitoring process for school bus drivers. We've placed a high priority on vehicle and traffic safety in our city, and this new law will assist us in making our roadways safer. I would like to thank our Attorney General for recognizing this important issue and for his continued support to improve public safety. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and I want to once again give a shout out to the teams from my Westchester and Suffolk regional offices, some of whom were here with us that did the work on this. Our report is very straightforward. It includes proposed language for legislative revisions, and as Senator Stuart Cousins said, this should not be a partisan issue. This is something that everyone should be able to agree on. We've spoken to members of the Senate and the Assembly. The Assembly members are all in conference in Albany, which is why none of them are here today. But I expect this to move quickly and for us to plug this loophole and make all our children safer. And if you have on-topic questions, and you could identify yourself to Amy, she will direct the show. Well, we think this has to be plugged into the existing system, which works well for violations of law if you get a ticket from a police officer. There's just this enormous loophole that the tickets from red light cameras are left out of the system entirely. We're not proposing changing things, but the bus companies are required to even keep track of accidents of school bus drivers in their personal cars, because we want to make sure that we have the safest drivers possible. The overwhelming majority of school bus drivers are not running red lights and do not violate traffic safety laws. So this would enable the companies to identify the relatively small number of those who do and enable the Department of Motor Vehicles to enforce the law as it was intended to be enforced. This is a statute that has not been updated since 1974 to take account of the more widespread use of red light cameras. We have proposals to expand their use in other parts of the state. We should close this loophole before we do anything else. There were some accidents that in other parts of the country that got our attention, and we started to look at this and realized very quickly that we thought we had come across a loophole. But it was really in response to discussions in our office and expressions of concern about school bus safety. There were some very serious accidents last year in a few places in the country, and that got us thinking about this. And then my team just took the investigation forward. Well, as soon as the legislature reconvenes, and if they get called back into special session, this would be a nice thing to get done. We don't think there should be any significant opposition. Certainly, if that's a possibility, we don't know if that's going to happen. That's up to the governor right now. But as soon as they reconvene, this should be at the top of their list, and we will be working between now and then to ensure that legislation is ready to go. We got cooperation from the bus companies. We've got details in our report showing the detailed information we got, and we actually were able to get information relating to their personnel files so we could identify specific drivers and make sure that we understood the nature of the problem. So far, everyone's cooperated. We did get help from local officials. And look, the school bus companies work for school districts. They work for us. They work to protect our children. This is not, there's no reason for them to be any less concerned about this than the rest of us, and we're just setting up a legal structure to correct this loophole and make sure that they are holding drivers accountable consistently, no matter how a ticket is issued. We decided that we got this far into it that this was clearly a widespread problem. We didn't want to delay any further by subpoenaing other bus companies. The proposals in our report are very simple. It's just adding a few sentences here and there to the vehicle and traffic law that will close this loophole. There has not been any suggestion that this is a problem that should be left hanging out there. So we're finished our investigation, and now we're moving on to get the legislation passed in Albany. Yes, and in the report we do discuss that. There are, there are locations that are just where there's a high incident of traffic accidents in general, but we did identify that. And this certainly, as was, I believe, our friends from the PTA Council mentioned, this is a particularly dangerous intersection, and the fact that we see buses running red lights right here is indicative of what happens at busy intersections. And it's a problem we can put an end to. This is often we're grappling with problems that seem to have no apparent solution. This is a serious problem, but it's got a very simple solution, and we're looking forward to getting it fixed. Thank you all.